On a serious note, it was very important for me to commit to coming here today. I don't have to tell the people in this room the significance of the maritime industry in this state. I don't have to tell you all about the significance of Louisiana's maritime industry on the country, on the world, because it truly is that important. And I think that our strength and our challenge at the same time is to make sure that everyone is aware of that. And just on a informational note, I will tell you that the members of our congressional delegation, whether they're from the North Louisiana, whether they're from South Louisiana, whether they're from rural Louisiana or the city, whether they represent the Port of New Orleans or the Port of South Louisiana or another port, whether they're Republican or Democrat, black or white, we all understand. And we're all on the same page when it comes to maritime issues in the state of Louisiana, which for us is a good thing, especially with the delegation working so well together. There are many times that members will come to me and say, Cedric, you have a better relationship with the administration. Can you bring this to the administration? And there are times that I will go to them and say, can you bring this to the House Republican leadership? That way we hit both sides both times with a consistent message, and it has proven for us to be very, very beneficial. So when we talk about how important the maritime industry is to this community, we also at times have to remind people that we're talking about 30 states, 2 Canadian provinces, when you want to talk about direct impact of this Mississippi River, the Port of New Orleans, the Port of South Louisiana, and what we do in this state. So when I was first elected in the beginning of the year, had a conversation with Gary, and I was right back here in the same place when we were talking to the Corps about the significance and the importance of dredging the Mississippi River. Well, as it would happen, once I was elected and I was in D.C., Speaker Pelosi and a small group of freshmen, well, all of the Democratic freshmen is a small group, so our little group and Leader Pelosi, we were having a meeting talking about the economy, talking about how we create jobs, how we go on with a jobs agenda and restoring the economy. Well, I was very candid with it, and I said, look, State of the Union was nice. We're talking about doubling exports in the next 5 years. Sad part about it, doubling the small amount of exports we have is not a lofty goal. We should really look at tripling exports over the next 5 to 7 years. However, we can't do any of it if we don't dredge the Mississippi. So we had a very extensive conversation about it. The next thing I knew, I received a call from her office, from her staff saying, Cedric, we don't know what happened or what you did, but everywhere Speaker Pelosi goes, she talks about the importance of dredging our ports, the Mississippi River. So I received another call from the speaker saying, Cedric, I know this is your first full week back in New Orleans. Would you please come up for a steering and policy committee meeting? It's just going to be the House leadership, which is the speaker, the leader, the assistant leader, the whip, the House Democratic chair, and a couple others talking about jobs. And she said, look, you're the only freshman, you're the only person in non-leadership that I'm inviting, but I'm inviting the person from the Ports of America to come up, the association to come up and testify. I want you here to talk about the importance of dredging, the importance of the maritime industry. So we had a chance to have a national conversation about the significance of what it is we do and the significance of dredging our most vital asset and our superhighway for trade, which went very, very well. Well, after that, I decided, and Representative Bustani and Scalise, who are great champions on the same issue, I took my charge with the Democrats. They took their charge with the Republicans. But I'll tell you that Representative Bustani and I then went meet with John Boehner to say, look, not a Democratic issue, not a Republican issue. This is a national issue that we have to focus on, and we have to focus on it now. Well, then we got to the 2 budget proposals, And the Democratic proposal, because we're not in the majority, is usually just a general proposal of priorities. This is what we would do. This is where we would do it. Well, I went back again to Pelosi and to Chris Van Hollen, who was writing the budget, to say, I know it's usually a general budget, but we need to show we're serious about dredging, and we need to show that we're serious about our maritime industry. So Leader Pelosi and Chris Van Hollen both put in a specific paragraph, 2 paragraphs actually, on the importance of the maritime industry, on the importance of dredging this river to its full depth, and all of those things. So we're making some headway in where we are in terms of educating people on it. Now, the difficult part is that the conversation is being dominated by the debt and the deficit. Now, we can talk about the debt and the deficit all day long, and we can talk about cuts all day long. But if we don't talk about investments that are going to give us a return on our investment or bring us significant revenue in the near future, then what we're doing is being very short-sighted when we now should be thinking of long-term investments that are going to pay off for generations and generations to come. So when you talk about investing in your river, first of all, we have the money. You all put the money in it to do it. Part of it is just doing the right thing, and that's one of the things that's the right thing. However, not just dredging. We're talking about an industry that has proved to be very important for this country for a very, very long time. So the one thing that we do have the ability to shape the conversation is, as we talk about the next 3 trade agreements that are going to come up, then the question becomes, I understand the importance of trade agreements, but why are we pursuing trade agreements if we're not necessarily going to dredge and maintain the waterways that we need to get the goods to market? So that's the conversation, and I'm telling you all this so that you understand what's going on in D.C. But I will tell you that this conversation and this different philosophy about whether we cut our way into the future, whether we spend our way into the future, whether we tax our way into the future, or do we do a strategic combination of all of them, is a very meaningful conversation. And I think it's a conversation that's going to have to be driven by you all. It's not going to be driven by Congress. I mean, the talking points are there. Both sides are doubling down on their talking points. And the unfortunate part in the House of Representatives, where people run every 2 years, it's a constant campaign. This conversation about the future of this country can't be about a constant campaign. It's going to really take a profile and courage to get it done. I think that's going to have to come from you all. You all know the significance of strategic investment at the same time of building a reserve, paying down debt, and doing all of those things that are going to be critical to make sure that we can still compete. Now, I'll just go off on a side note at the same time, because I think that this is very important, and it's something that I've tried to highlight in the last couple of weeks. And some people may have had a chance to see me on the House floor, what some people may even call venting. But for the people in this room, you all know firsthand that in Louisiana, especially in South Louisiana, we do it better than anybody in the world. And when I say we do it, it doesn't matter what's at the end of that sentence. We do it better than anybody in the world, whether it's cooking, whether it's shipbuilding. And if anyone wants to question the quality of the ships we build, I would say call Gary Swess. He doesn't have a complaint about what they're building. Call Boise. No one's complaining about the ships Boise builds. And even if you want to go back to Huntington Ingalls, Avondale, Northrop Grumman, whatever we want to call it, we build some of the best ships, some of the best things in this country. If you want to talk about armored vehicles, let's talk about Textron. If you want to talk about space exploration, let's look out at NASA. If you want to talk about yachts, let's look at Trinity Marine. We can't allow people to question the products that we build because we do it better than everybody else, and we need to start patting our own back and blowing our own horn so that people understand we're proud of what we do and we do it better than other places. So to that extent, I have a little chip on my shoulder about what's happening at Northrop Grumman and Ingalls. The last meeting I had with the business owners out there, it came to light that there's a provision in Department of Defense that would allow Huntington Ingalls to recoup up to $310 million of the cost that it spends to close down the shipyard. Well, at least where I come from, and my philosophy is that we really should take that 310 and invest it in creating new jobs, not helping someone eliminate jobs that we already have. So as we talk about the future and we talk about attracting more business, even on a state level, as we talk about trying to get companies to come into New Orleans or come into the region, please come locate. The first priority should always be to help the businesses that are here first. Before you go out and woo a business to come in and compete in Louisiana, we ought to see if we have a business that already does it and whether we can help them invest so that they can expand as opposed to bringing in someone to do it. So as we talk about investing and doing all of those things for the future, at the same time, we absolutely cannot reward a company for what I call quitting on Louisiana. And you can't tell me that the ships that they build at Avondale, with the one thing I will agree on is that it's an inferior facility, but the employees are not inferior, and the ships that they build are certainly not inferior. So I would rather see that 310 invested in or put in an economic development fund so that we can help businesses that are here expand or attract if we don't have a business here, or to modernize the shipyard to make it competitive. So those are just some of the things that I think that are priorities. And the people in this room, I believe, and I know many of you, are great corporate citizens around this community. And many people will always say, well, Cedric, you know, you're a lawyer, you're an accounting major in undergrad. What's this fascination with the maritime industry? And the one thing that I will tell you is that in Congress, no matter what conversation we're having, I can always bring it back to the maritime industry, the importance of dredging that river, and the importance of making investments. So we're talking about homeland security like we were doing a couple weeks ago. So we can talk homeland security all we want, but if we don't dredge the mouth of the Mississippi and upriver, when we're trying to get the oil out for the rest of the country, then that becomes a real risk to this country in terms of homeland security. Well, if we're talking about crime on the streets of every urban city in this country, well, if we're talking about crime in New Orleans, the Port of New Orleans gives a person the ability who wants to just wake up every day, go work hard, to make a great wage. And it gives them the ability to receive future training and have a long-term career that can sustain a family, that can help the kids get educated, and truly be transformative for that family. So if you're talking economic development, no matter what you're talking, I can always point back to our maritime industry because I see it work. I see guys that I went to school with who made poor decisions early on in life, who are now doing extremely well. And what they do every day is they wake up, they go to their yard, and they go work for one of our businesses, either at the Port of New Orleans or somewhere, and they go home at the end of the day. Now, they're dog tired when they get home, but they're rewarded very well at the end of the week, and you can see it in their family. So that's why it's critically important that we keep this conversation going, and we educate people all around the country on how important that it is. And I just want you all to know that I have not even looked down on the prepared remarks. I have no idea where I am. But the other thing I think that is critically important is bringing common sense to Washington. And there are probably a million definitions of common sense, and I like to think that one of the definitions is knowing the difference between in theory and in reality. Because some things in theory sound great, but in reality, they just don't work. So, for example, in theory, it may be a good idea to have someone go twice to get a TWIC card. But in reality, it's not productive. You lose 2 days of work, and it just doesn't make good sense. So we are trying to fix the requirement that a person actually go down to the office to apply and do all the information in the first part, and then go back to actually pick up the TWIC card. We don't do passports like that. We don't do a number of things like that. And I think that that's one thing where we can actually listen to the businesses on the ground who are saying, look, I don't want to lose a guy twice or a woman twice just for the TWIC process. So we're gonna try to fix that, and we're also gonna try to push back the renewal until we have the scanners in place to utilize them in the first place. So those are just some things that I think make common sense that we need to make sure we fix, because we can't have backwards and unproductive regulations that slow down our businesses. The other thing that I think is critically important is to reach out to our businesses and have a clear line of communication, whether we agree on everything or not. It's very clear that we're all not going to agree on everything all the time. I mean, you have, and I see my good friend Dwight Barnes over there, but for the first time in probably 50 years, you have the wholesalers and the distributors in the beer business fighting each other, and they agree on everything all the time. So we won't always agree, but I think what's important is to have communication. Just last week, we brought up the Chemical Facility Anti-Terrorism Standards Bill, which is CFATS. And there are two competing Republican versions of the bill going through. So what we did was we convened a conference call between some of our chemical facilities, the Louisiana Chemical Association, to have a conversation with them about what would you like to see in this bill. Give us some amendments that you think make sense. Talk to us from a realistic, practical standpoint, from someone who does this day in and day out. So you will get calls from us. And we had a very meaningful call with a bunch of very good suggestions. So every time you get a call, or if you get a call from our office, it is not a fundraising call. More times than not, it's us calling you looking for information on how to make something that's coming before us better. And it's critical for us, and the one thing we pride ourselves on is knowing what we know and knowing what we don't know. So those things we don't know, we're going to reach out to you all, and we're going to solicit your opinion. We're going to ask for your advice. There's not a week that goes since we've been in Congress that we have not called Gary LaGrange at the port to say, hey, Gary, this is coming up. What do you think about it? Give us some advice on how to make it better, how to make it make more sense so that it's better for Louisiana, it's better for our port, it's better for our community. So I think that if we just keep that in mind, we will continue to advance what it is we're trying to do. And especially seeing Judge Chasson over there, I want to make sure that people understand that as things change in Louisiana, some things are kind of changing more drastically. The 2nd Congressional District used to span from the Wrigley's to Wagaman, which for a New Orleans kid I thought was a pretty long way. Well, now we're going to expand from the Wrigley's to the Baton Rouge Airport. So we're going to take in the Lakefront Airport, the New Orleans Airport, and the Baton Rouge Airport. We're going to take in the Port of New Orleans and the Port of South Louisiana. We're going to take all upriver and take in the chemical plants and all of those things. So when you talk about an economic corridor, when you talk about a super region, the 2nd Congressional District is going to mirror that super region that we talk about in this state. And I know that as of late, it's been a controversy all over the country, and I know it's been very popular for some governors to step back and say, I don't want high-speed rail money. That's an investment in a state, in a country, that's bar none. When you talk about putting billions of dollars worth of construction on the ground to move people faster, it's just a good idea, especially when you talk about an area that you never know from June to November when everybody's going to have to evacuate. Why would you not want high-speed rail that can quickly move people out of a region safely, quickly, with a smaller carbon footprint? So that's another issue, and it has it's tangent to the maritime industry, but I think what it is best for Louisiana, and that's the conversation, and that's the question that we should keep front and center no matter what we do. On another note, Congressman Landry, Congressman Scalise, and I have been working to boost and expedite the number of drilling permits that we have, that we're issuing. We've had 15 to date, which is not enough. Far too few have been for new exploration, and we have to make it faster. We have to make it work. One of the things we have to do is make sure that they have the money and the resources to process the applications, and the second thing we have to do is make sure that they have the will to do it. So the entire delegation is also working on that issue, and as we talk about new exploration, Congressman Landry has also made a new issue of making sure that we expedite the permitting process for plugging and the abandoned wells at the same time. So those are the key issues for me, and I will close with making sure, and it's a conversation that I've recently started to have more and more, and that is to make sure that we also stress and utilize what I think makes New Orleans such a great place to live. It's our diversity. When you come to New Orleans, you never know what to expect. You never know who you're talking to. You never know where they're from or any of that. So to the extent that we can do it, we should do it because it's the right thing to do. We have to figure out a way to increase the number of minority and disadvantaged businesses that participate in the maritime industry, because as I can tell you that there are two great benefits of it. One, it's the right thing to do, but two, when those businesses increase their business, they will hire more high school kids, they will hire more minority kids, where we have a 50% dropout rate right now. And the number one indicator in a kid finishing high school and going off to college, believe it or not, is whether they receive a summer job. My first summer job was, and I hope Peter's not here, I apologize for it, but I was 15, I didn't know any better. My first summer job was at LSU Dental School, and I was using a guillotine to cut the heads off of lab rats doing research on caffeine. Now, was it educational? Yes. Was it gruesome? Yes. However, I was surrounded by doctors from all over the country who exposed me to a bunch of new things. I was exposed to sushi for the first time. I was exposed to different cultures, and I was exposed to a different work environment. That's the significance of giving our young kids that first opportunity into the workplace, which will increase the high school graduation rate, increase them going to college, so that our education system now comes up and starts to compete. So when we start talking about we're all in this together, I want us to know that no matter what we're talking about, it's all connected, and we all have to make sure that we're investing in the same thing, and we're investing in the future, because I think, and I don't think, I know that this is absolutely the best state to live in the country. I know this region is the best region to live in the world. I just finished traveling to Batumi, to Baku, to Afghanistan, to Iraq, to Prague, to Qatar, and to Israel. I was with a different delegation 2 times. I had the luxury, whenever I introduced myself, of saying I represent the greater New Orleans area. Everyone knew what the greater New Orleans area was, and everyone had a question about how's New Orleans doing, how's the music, how's the jazz. Some people talked about the port. Some people talked about how could they be like New Orleans. So we have a great asset here. We have the Mississippi River. We have to utilize it. And I'll close with just where we are on the free trade agreements. The President, the Democratic Caucus, the New Dems, which I am a member of, and the New Dems is a more business-oriented faction of the Democratic Caucus. We promote smart business ideas, and we promote spending money wisely. So here's where we are on all 3 trade deals. The TAA has not been reauthorized, and the president, the New Dems, and a couple other caucuses have called for the TAA to be reauthorized before we hear any of the trade deals. Now, I will tell you that it appears that that is a non-starter if it doesn't come forward. So if we don't get any action or movement on the TAA, and we can't get the Republicans to even bring it up for consideration, the president won't send the free trade agreements to the House for passage in the first place. That's what our last conversation was, and that's what we were told. So it's important to get the TAA done so that we can get South Korea, so that we can get Panama, and we can address Colombia. So those three free trade agreements, and before anyone asks, I have a good idea how I'm voting on one or two of them. The other two I'm genuinely still up in the air on. But having TAA passed gives us some great comfort and the ability to alleviate some concerns that are associated with our trade agreement. So that's where we are. We're working to do it, and I'm willing to take any questions if you want to do that at this time.
So, any guidance, any suggestions? I know you do have a good relationship with the president. I know he knows about this, but the time for us to solve it and repair and maintain the river is being lost. I would say if we don't have additional funding within the next 3 to 4 weeks, that river is lost. That we have people looking to invest in the river. Spent some time this week with coal representatives looking to buy a facility. And they're part of this coalition saying we need to dredge the river. So it's a big deal for us. Any thoughts, guidance, anything that we can do to help? There's been discussions at the time about the industry coming up as a whole for a hearing. I'm sure there are many in the room, and those not here that are willing to do so. Anything we can do, any ideas, we appreciate it.
I borrowed this from a president before, but it's something that I just now use all the time, which is what I call climaxes in foolishness. And I think the 310 for Ingalls is just crazy. And I think that this new requirement from Representative Ryan and what they're pushing for, that any emergency spending have a pay for, which means in the middle of this budget debate, they're saying that anything we decide to spend on disasters, we have to find somewhere else in the budget to cut. Well, one, I think it's the wrong thing to do. But two, it means that people have to wait on disaster assistance for the Democrats and the Republicans to get together and agree on budget cuts. That hadn't happened in centuries. So why would you make people who are in need of help, and especially coming from an area which we were spared this time of massive, massive flooding. But there are places around the country that are suffering severely from tornadoes, from floods, from wildfires, from a number of things that now will not get disaster relief from the federal government because it is required that we find an offset to cut in order to help them. We don't do that when we help other countries. We certainly shouldn't do it when we help American cities, American parishes, American families. So what we're trying to fight right now, and I had an amendment up last week on the Homeland Security Appropriations Bill to require that we don't, to eliminate the mandate that we have a pay for or budget cut to balance off disaster spending. So as we advocate to the White House, to the Democratic administration, and our two senators continue to fight, we need to make sure that the Republicans understand that this requirement is not the American way. This is not the right thing to do. This is just, and you know, this is, and I can't believe that it's all of the Republican House members, but it's certainly Cantor, who's the whip, who are proposing and mandating that we have a pay for it. I think that slows down our ability to get funding for dredging. Because if we take 95 million, we take 100 million to dredge, that means we have to find another 100 million to cut from somewhere else. That won't happen. And when you talk about investment, think of what we lose if we don't spend $100 million. I mean, that's how the conversation should be shaped. So we'll continue to work, and to the extent that we have more ideas to get the message out there, we've started writing op-eds. I know that you all are writing op-eds to get the message around the country, but we've been beating up on the White House and our Democratic leadership to just keep pounding them with how important this issue is. But at the same time, we have to make sure that we don't get stuck with a pay-for requirement, because I think that that would slow us down tremendously trying to get the House, the Senate, Republicans, and Democrats to agree on where to cut $100 million to spend $100 million for disaster assistance. So we have to make sure that in any disaster bill that comes through, the money for dredging is there, but we need it done sooner rather than later, and yesterday would have been better than tomorrow. The other thing we have to do, and we can't lose the opportunity, is to make sure that we advocate for a beneficial use of the sediment that we dredge. I mean, every hurricane season, even though we've improved our flood protection and our hurricane protection, we still sit on pins and needles this time of year. And it would be a little more comforting to us if we knew that we were in the process of rebuilding our coast, rebuilding our wetlands, and rebuilding our first line of defense against hurricanes. And all of the material that we dredge could be used to do that. So we need to have a comprehensive conversation, but the beneficial use is important, but we can't let it hold up immediate dredging right now. But that's something that we have to tie together at some point, because I think it's another way for us to show our innovation in this city, in this state, because we should be looking at right now some prototypes or some sketches on vessels, on barges that could be used to quickly receive a lot of sediment and dump sediment at the same place, same time. We may have it, we may not have it, but that's another something that we can be building in Louisiana better than everybody else.
One concern I have is, as a local New Orleans-based business that relies on the Port of New Orleans, in fact, we have leases with the Port of New Orleans, we're seeing customers already divert cargoes to other ports for the what-if. They learned during Katrina, like we all did, you've got to have a backup plan. So they're not waiting for Congress to magically come up with $100 million to solve this year's problem. They're starting to retool their supply chain to take advantage of ports like Savannah. That's usually the first place they go. Mobile. Had a conversation with a railroad, I won't mention which one. They're a large player here in New Orleans. Their executives have told me or asked, why should they pay attention to the press releases coming from the Port of New Orleans and your quoted in it? And I said, because obviously all of your customers are going to be impacted. And he said, well, that impact may actually net us more business in other ports. There's more to it than just this issue. It's going to be and if anyone else gets funding for dredging, we need to be screaming.
Well, I think that we're the priority for, and I think that's very clear, we're the priority for dredging. The bad part is we're in the minority, and people who decide which bills run don't listen to me. But we have a good relationship with Boehner, and we're trying to work through it. Why it's so important and why what other ports are saying are not as key to our conversation, it's because 60% of the agriculture that's shipped out of this country comes through the Port of New Orleans. So when you talk about all of those cities up the river and all of those farmers and all of those people who are producing goods, oh, they understand. And which is why in Congress now you see more and more members that are not, quote unquote, on the Mississippi joining the caucus and getting into this issue, because they understand that if their farmers, if their producers can't get their goods to market, then it's a waste of their time also, which means the Mississippi River, and we don't say it just as because it's convenient, it's our river, we get to claim it, but it is the superhighway for shipping goods out of this country. So you can't increase our exports without a viable Mississippi. You can't make the Midwest profitable in terms of farming and all those things without a viable Mississippi. So that's the conversation that we keep pounding and people are starting to understand. So that's the message that we have to keep pushing. To an extent, we do compete with Mobile. To some extent, we're going to compete with the Gulf Coast and Mississippi soon, or we're going to compete with Houston and all of those things. But if you're trying to get your goods to market and you're along that Mississippi, you don't have a choice. And we need to let people know that for the manufacturing and the farming in this country, the Mississippi River is not a alternative route. It is the route. So I agree with you, and we have to make sure that we understand. And if that 35-to-1 number is the number, then that's something that we have to talk about more often, because that's return on investments, the part of the conversation no one's talking about. But it's going to take the business community to really get the Democrats and the Republicans together talking about what's important. And that is our future and our return on investment, which is why we just can't have cuts be the only conversation or revenue be the only conversation. So it has to be about strategic investment. So thank you for that number. And if you can give me the site on the 35-to-1 return, that would be very helpful too.
Past president of World Trade Center. And I wonder if I can, I know this is mostly important kind of form, but I wonder if I can raise the healthcare technology question. As you know, I work with law enforcement and emergency response international health organizations. As you know, the High-Tech Act provides financial stimulus funding for electronic health records for those funding basically by Medicare. There are a number of groups that were not included in that electronic health record activity or funding. And some of the groups are coming back to see if the contract can't be amended to provide additional funds for those groups. I wanted to encourage you all to be aware that departments of corrections and sheriffs who run the nation's jails and prisons were not included in electronic health records. And they definitely should be for a couple of reasons. One is good health care and facilitating handoff of offenders when they leave their jail or prison to go back to the community and public health centers. They need good electronic health records for offender reentry. And also, the cost of corrections is really a major problem for the country. If with electronic health records there is a belief that the cost of health care can be reduced, and in particular in corrections because of, frankly, just terrible records coming in and going and multiple tests and so forth. So I hope that you all would consider that high-tech comes up, including electronic health records for Department of Corrections and Sheriff's offices, as that can reduce our health care costs for population that we all as taxpayers pay for.
Will do, and I'm the ranking member on the Health and Technology Subcommittee on the Small Business Committee. And we just had a hearing last week on the requirements for electronic health care records. So we'll bring that up as an issue, and if you want, I'll get with Hal Turner and those guys from the Sheriff's Association to make sure that we include them in the conversation. But that's a good point, and the amount we pay for incarceration in this state is something that we all should talk about also. We incarcerate more people than anywhere in the world, and we still have the highest crime rate, which means we're not doing something right, which is why it's so important for our industries that are labor intensive that we support them so that they can hire more people. Hopefully we can develop the mindset of giving people second chances who come home so we don't maintain this 52% recidivism rate, because we release 15,000 people every year, 7,500 go back over the next 3 years. And for every percentage point that we reduce recidivism, we save the state $12 million annually. So when we talk about where we can find some money to do other things and invest in this state, that should be a way where we can find it. We're spending almost $600 million in corrections. So if we can get that together, then it frees up money for the state to start investing in some of the things that we may have to just start doing ourselves and not depend on the federal government to do. So that's a great point, and that we will work on that.
My question is in general center on Homeland Security. of what the understanding or perception is in Washington about potential impacts that has on our country?
Well, I'm on the Cybersecurity Subcommittee of Homeland Security, and I will just tell you, oh yeah, we understand it. It's what keeps us up at night. And when we talk about the threats and the investment that we have to make, you have to remember we don't protect just the .gov world. We have to protect the .com, the .net, all of those domains. And when you talk about the number of hack attempts daily, it's tremendous. And as we continue to move this country, this world to better technology, we open ourselves up for cybersecurity threats. So let's just think about the day where we truly go to the smart meters on the home and the smart grids that are all controlled by a computer somewhere that's vulnerable for hacking. So it's a very critical issue, and I probably there's some things I know that I can't say, but I will tell you that we absolutely understand that it is a very critical issue. And I would like the public to talk about it more so that they understand how critical of an issue. We talk about identity theft and things like that. It's really important that we protect those things that are valuable to us, our passwords, our things of that nature, to make sure that we do our part as citizens to protect it. The other part about cybersecurity is not only the Homeland Security aspect in terms of public safety, it's also making sure that our technology is not compromised, or stolen, or any of those things, because we go through that, and our companies go through that a lot. So we are aware of protecting our cyberspace and make sure that we do the best we can to do it. There's a clear focus on it. And the last thing I'll just say is that there's a big fight in Congress between Homeland Security and other committees on just in terms of jurisdiction, which is another one of these things that just doesn't make good sense. If you're talking about Homeland Security, if you're talking about CFATs, if you're talking about cybersecurity, all of those things should be vested with the jurisdiction of the Homeland Security Committee so people know where to go and we have a focus on it, as opposed to being spread out to the Transportation Committee, which FEMA is under, or those things. So part of that is just getting some common sense up there, which is what we're fighting to do. But yes, we understand it. The last thing I want to do is recognize James Harris and Enoch Smith, who are in my local office here. You can always contact them. Zach Butterworth is in the DC office, who handles all of the maritime and transportation type issues, and I will tell you that Zach's the person that will reach out and call you over and over again to make sure that we know your opinion and get your ideas. And the one thing that I want to keep imploring you all to do is to call me and give me ideas. Your great ideas, I'm not going to give you credit for them. I'm going to take them. I'm going to introduce them as amendments. I may even pass them. And I'm going to continue to look like the smartest guy in the room. But I am the smartest guy in the room because I continue to reach out to you all to get your ideas. So, and on some things I will give you credit. But I want to make sure that we have the relationship, that we communicate a lot, because that's the best way for us to continue to be the bright spot in Congress, and that's to get ideas from people who do it every day, who know more about the subject than we do, who wake up every day dealing with the subject. So please continue to do that so that we can continue to have the reputation as being one of the smartest guys in Congress. So thank you very much, and thanks for having me.